My name is Lorraine Whitaker, and I've lived in the same cedar-sided house on Redfield Avenue for 38 years. When my husband and I bought it, the paint was peeling and the porch sagged slightly to the left. We couldn't afford much back then. He worked night shifts at the steel plant, and I cleaned offices downtown. We patched the roof ourselves, sanded the floors ourselves, planted the sycamore tree in the front yard ourselves. That tree is taller than the house now. It was there when my son Marcus learned to ride a bike. It was there when my husband collapsed in the driveway from a heart attack 15 years ago. And it was there on the morning everything shifted. Though I didn't realize it yet. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays are quiet in my house. I wake up before sunrise, brew my coffee strong and black, and stand by the kitchen sink watching the light stretch over the fence line. The neighborhood has aged with me, fewer kids. More delivery vans, lawns cut shorter than they used to be. My grandson Owen was supposed to come by after school that day. He's 16, all elbows and awkward silence. And lately he spends more time on his phone than looking at people. But he still hugs me when he arrives. That matters. He came early that morning instead. His mother, my former daughter-in-law, texted that she had an emergency meeting and asked if I could keep him until evening. Of course I could. Owen came in quietly, dropped his backpack by the couch, and muttered something that might have been morning. He looked tired, not just teenage tired, but distracted tired. I didn't press him. I've learned that sometimes love is leaving space. I made him scrambled eggs anyway. He didn't touch them at first. I left the plate on the coffee table and pretended not to notice. By 10 o'clock, he was stretched under a throw blanket on the couch, television low, eyes closed. I assumed he'd drifted off. I went upstairs to fold laundry. That's when I heard the front door open. Not a knock, not the bell. The actual door, the storm latch clicking back. Slow, careful. I froze halfway down the hallway, a stack of towels pressed against my chest. My first thought was wind. My second thought was wrong. Footsteps crossed the entryway, steady, deliberate, confident. Not the hesitant steps of someone unsure if they're welcome. I moved toward the staircase but stopped before I reached the railing. I knew those footsteps. Marcus. He didn't call out. Didn't say mom. Didn't even clear his throat. He walked through my house like a man measuring it. I watched from between the banister spindles as he turned toward the den, toward the old walnut desk that used to belong to my husband. That desk holds everything: insurance policies, the deed, copies of my will, property tax records, my husband's death certificate, 40 years of proof that this house is mine. Marcus knew that. He helped me file those papers after the funeral. I heard the desk lid roll back, then drawers opening, paper sliding, the faint metallic sound of a stapler shifting. My pulse began to thud in my ears. Then his phone buzzed. He answered immediately. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I'm inside." A pause. "No, she's not down here." Another pause. "I told you, she never checks this stuff." The words landed like something physical. He moved closer to the window, lowering his voice further. But the house carries sound in strange ways. Every syllable floated up the staircase. I just need clear photos of the original deed. The signature page is what matters. If we can establish intent before the refinance, we're good. Silence. Then he laughed, soft, short. She's 70. By the time she figures anything out, it'll already be processed. My knees weakened. Processed. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I felt something crack, not loudly, not dramatically, but deep and internal. Like ice shifting under weight. He continued, "No, she won't fight it. She hates conflict. Always has." Another pause. "Yeah, I'll be quick." The desk rolled shut. Footsteps returned toward the front door. It closed with a quiet click, and I stood there for a full minute before my body remembered how to function. My son had entered my home without telling me, gone through private documents, photographed them, and discussed some kind of legal maneuver to override me. Override, as if I were paperwork, as if I were an obstacle. as if my life inside these walls were just something to be processed. I sat down on the top stair because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for my breathing to steady. Long enough for the initial shock to cool into something colder. Footsteps padded softly behind me. I turned. Owen stood in the hallway, blanket still around his shoulders. He wasn't half asleep. His face was pale. "I heard him," he said quietly. I swallowed. "You did," he nodded. Then he held up his phone. I recorded it. For a second, I couldn't speak. "I woke up when the door opened," he said. "I didn't think he saw me, so I just stayed still." He looked younger than 16 in that moment. And older. He pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the hallway, muffled but unmistakable. "I'm inside. She never checks this stuff. She's 70. By the time she figures anything out, the recording lasted nearly 4 minutes. When it ended, the house felt different. Not broken, but revealed. Owen lowered the phone slowly. "Grandma, what is he trying to do?" I looked past him toward the sycamore tree outside the front window. Its branches were bare against the pale October sky. I felt something settle inside me. Not panic, not confusion. Clarity. "He thinks," I said carefully, "that I won't see what's happening." Owen studied me. "And will you?" I met his eyes. "Oh," I said softly, "I already have." I did not cry. That may sound cold, but it wasn't. Crying would have been easier. Instead, I made tea. My hands were steady as I filled the kettle. Steady as I placed 2 mugs on the kitchen table. Steady as I slid one toward Owen and sat across from him. Inside, something fundamental had shifted. Marcus thought I hated conflict. He was wrong. What I hate is noise, chaos, emotional theatrics. I prefer quiet decisions. And I had just made one. "Owen," I said carefully, "I need you to send that recording to yourself. Email it, upload it somewhere private. Don't mention it to anyone. Not even your mom yet. Can you do that?" He nodded immediately. I already backed it up. Of course he had. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Good." He hesitated. "Are you going to tell him you know?" "No." The word surprised even me in how firm it sounded. "Not yet," because the truth was this. Marcus believed I was passive, predictable, slow. There is power in being underestimated. That afternoon, instead of baking, I drove downtown. I didn't use my home computer. I didn't make phone calls from my kitchen. I parked 3 blocks from the courthouse and walked the rest of the way, as if I were simply running errands. The law office I chose had a plain brass sign, Harrington and Cole, estate and property law. I didn't pick them randomly. 2 years ago at a church luncheon, I'd sat beside a woman who mentioned they handled a complicated guardianship dispute with absolute discretion. I remembered that. Discretion mattered now. The receptionist looked up when I entered. "How can we help you?" "I need to speak with an attorney about a potential property issue," I said calmly. "Soon." As it turned out, soon meant the next morning. I arrived 10 minutes early. The attorney's name was Daniel Cole, mid-40s. Direct eyes. No small talk. I handed him a folder. Inside, a copy of my unsigned transfer documents Marcus had pressured me to sign 8 months ago, and a typed summary of what I'd heard that morning. Then I slid a flash drive across the desk. "That," I said, "is the recording." He listened without interrupting. Once. Then again. He didn't react visibly, but something in his posture sharpened. When the audio ended, he leaned back. "Mrs. Wantilm, Whitaker," he said evenly, "your son is attempting to establish documentation that could support a claim of intended joint ownership prior to a refinancing event. If falsified properly, it could complicate matters significantly." Complicate. Such a polite word for theft. "He believes I won't fight," I said. Mr. Cole folded his hands. "That belief is common in cases involving elderly property holders. It is often misplaced." I appreciated that he didn't soften his language. "What do I do?" I asked. He answered without hesitation. First, remove every original document from your home today. Store them in a bank safety deposit box. Second, we update your will immediately, not just to clarify ownership, but to formally document your prior refusal of joint transfer. Third, we file a notice of intent to preserve sole title, quietly. And fourth, he paused slightly, you consider reporting unlawful entry. The word hung there. Unlawful. He had entered my home without permission, not with a key I'd given him. Not with invitation. He had assumed access. And if I don't report it, I asked, then we rely solely on defensive positioning, which works, but reporting creates record. Record creates leverage. Leverage. I understood leverage. I had spent 16 years cleaning offices for people who thought I didn't notice the contracts left open on their desks. I learned long ago that paper matters. I'll report it, I said. By that afternoon, my house was no longer vulnerable. The deed, the insurance policies, my will, my husband's original signed mortgage release, every page that mattered now sat inside a steel box at First National Bank. I changed the locks the same evening. I did it myself. New deadbolt, new strike plate, reinforced screws. When I closed the door that night, it felt solid in a way it hadn't before. Marcus called the next day. His voice was warm, too warm. Hey, Mom, I was thinking maybe we could revisit those papers we talked about. I let silence stretch. Which papers? I asked mildly. A beat too long. The co-ownership idea. It just makes sense long term. I've retained independent counsel, I replied. Silence, real silence this time. You what? I'm reviewing all estate matters formally. His tone shifted, not angry yet, just tight. Mom, you don't need lawyers involved. We can handle this as family. Family. The word tasted strange now. I agree, I said calmly. Family shouldn't need lawyers. He didn't respond. We both knew what that meant. I'll come by tonight, he said finally. No, I replied. You'll call first. Another pause. Then carefully, did something happen? I looked at the sycamore tree through the window. Its branches were nearly bare now. Yes, I said. Something did. I hung up before he could ask more. That evening, I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching headlights move across the ceiling as cars passed. I wasn't afraid, but I was done being managed. He thought I wouldn't understand until it was processed. He was about to learn that understanding isn't something that fades with age, it sharpens. And I was only just beginning. Marcus didn't wait long. He showed up Saturday evening just after dark. The porch light cast a pale circle across the front steps, and I saw his silhouette through the frosted glass before he rang the bell. He looked taller somehow, thinner, like stress had been trimming him down from the inside. This time he knocked. I opened the door but didn't step aside immediately. Mom, he said, forcing a smile. Can we talk? You may come in, I replied evenly. He brushed past me, glancing around the entryway as if checking for something that might have changed. It had. He just didn't know all of it yet. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd once done homework. The same table where he'd slid those transfer papers toward me months ago, with a pen already uncapped. I didn't offer tea, he noticed. Why did you hire a lawyer? He asked without preamble. I folded my hands in front of me. Why did you enter my home without telling me? His eyes flickered. Just slightly. I've always had a key. You used to, I said calmly. You don't anymore. His jaw tightened. Mom, you're overreacting. I don't believe I am. He leaned forward. I'm trying to protect you. If something happens, probate could drag this place into court for months. I'm preventing problems. No, I said quietly. You're attempting to create leverage. The word landed between us like a dropped glass. His expression changed. Where is this coming from? From your phone call, I replied. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched realization move across his face. First confusion, then calculation, then something closer to fear. I don't know what you think you heard. I heard you say I was 70. That I wouldn't fight, that by the time I understood it would already be processed. His mouth opened, closed. He studied me as though seeing someone unfamiliar. You were upstairs? Yes. He swallowed. You're twisting it. I have the recording. The color drained from his face. Recording? Owen woke when you came in. He recorded your entire conversation. For a moment, Marcus looked like a man standing on ice he hadn't realized was thin. You're involving Owen in this? He demanded, anger finally surfacing. You involved him when you entered this house believing he was asleep. His hands flattened against the table. Mom, I was under pressure. You have no idea what kind of financial strain I'm under. I do, I said quietly. You told me. That's why I gave you money twice last year. His gaze snapped up. You knew I was struggling, and you still refused to sign. Yes, the word came without hesitation, and that's what this is about, isn't it? I continued. Not taxes, not probate, debt. He didn't answer. But he didn't deny it either. I wasn't going to steal from you, he said finally, softer now. It would still be in the family. In your name, I corrected. Silence again. The refrigerator hummed behind us. A car drove past outside. Did you falsify anything? I asked. He looked down. That was answer enough. My chest tightened. Not in shock, in grief. You raised me better than this, he muttered suddenly, as if trying to shift the weight. No, I said steadily. I raised you to work for what you want, not to manipulate your mother. He pushed back from the table, pacing now. You don't understand how fast things spiraled. The business loan, the penalties. I thought if I could secure this house as collateral temporarily. Collateral? I repeated. His pacing stopped. He had said too much. You were going to use my home to fix your mistakes. It wouldn't have come to that. You can't promise that. His shoulders sagged. For the first time, I saw not the schemer, but the frightened boy who used to run to me when something broke. But fear does not excuse betrayal. I filed notice preserving sole ownership, I said. I've secured every original document, and I've reported the unlawful entry. His head snapped up. You what? There is now a record. He stared at me as if I'd struck him. You'd go to the police? You entered my home under false assumption of absence and attempted to gather documents for fraudulent use. Yes. His breathing grew heavier. They'll destroy me, he whispered. No, I said softly. Your choices will. The anger drained from him, leaving something hollow. You'd really let this go that far? I didn't take it that far, I replied. You did when you opened that desk. We stood there, separated by 30 years of memory and one irreversible decision. Is there anything I can say? He asked finally. I considered that carefully. Not tonight. He nodded once, a small, defeated movement, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he paused. I never thought you'd turn against me. I held his gaze. I never thought you would either. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stood there for a long moment. My hands trembled, not from fear, from mourning. Because protecting yourself from your own child doesn't feel like victory, it feels like survival. And survival, I was learning, sometimes costs more than money. The detective called 3 weeks later. His name was Sergeant Mills. His voice was steady, unhurried, the kind of voice that had delivered difficult news before. We've reviewed the recording, Mrs. Whitaker, he said. We've also spoken with your son and the attorney he referenced. I sat at the kitchen table while he spoke, staring at the small scratch in the wood near Marcus's old seat, a mark from when he was 12, and tried to carve his initials into the edge before I caught him. We found drafted language, Sergeant Mills continued. Transfer documents prepared with backdated signature placeholders. That constitutes attempted fraud. The word settled in the air. Attempted. He hadn't succeeded. Because he hadn't expected resistance. What happens now? I asked. There will be formal charges filed. Entering without permission and attempted financial fraud. The district attorney's office will proceed. After I hung up, I didn't move for a while. I thought I would feel vindicated. I didn't. I felt tired. The legal process moved slowly after that. There were hearings, paperwork, statements. Owen gave his account with his mother beside him. I sat in a courtroom and listened to lawyers speak about my life as though it were a case study. Marcus avoided looking at me. He looked smaller in a suit. Smaller than the man who had stood in my den believing I wouldn't fight back. His attorney argued financial distress, poor judgment, no prior criminal history, all true. The judge listened carefully, asked precise questions, reviewed the recording twice in open court. When the sentence came, it was measured but firm: probation, mandatory financial counseling, community service, restitution of legal costs, and a formal no-contact order without legal intermediaries. Not prison, but not nothing. The judge spoke directly to Marcus before concluding. Financial pressure does not justify exploiting trust, particularly within family. Age is not incapacity. Assumption of vulnerability is not defense. I didn't look at my son while those words were spoken, because I didn't need to. He knew. Outside the courthouse, the air was sharp and cold. I sat in my car with the engine running and finally allowed myself to cry. Not because he'd been charged, but because somewhere between boyhood and middle age, I had lost him in a way I couldn't undo. Weeks passed. The house grew quiet again. Winter stripped the sycamore bare, branches black against gray sky. Owen visited one afternoon in early spring. He'd grown taller somehow, shoulders broader, voice steadier. We sat on the porch with mugs of coffee, sunlight warming the boards beneath our feet. "Are you still mad at him?" he asked carefully. I considered the question. "No," I said after a moment. "I'm sad." He nodded slowly. "Sad is heavier," he said. "Yes," I agreed, "but anger burns too fast. Sadness stays honest." He stared at the tree for a long while. "I didn't want anyone to take this place from you," he said quietly. "They didn't," I replied, because that was the truth. The house remained mine, legally reinforced now in ways it hadn't been before. My will updated, ownership indisputable, every document secured. But something else had changed too. I no longer confused silence with peace. There had been signs long before that Tuesday: the increasing urgency about paperwork, the subtle framing of conversations, always presented as concern for me when they were really solutions for him. Love can blur warning signs, especially when it comes to your children. We want to believe need justifies behavior. It doesn't. Protection is not cruelty. Boundaries are not betrayal. A month later, Marcus requested, through his attorney, permission to write me a letter. I allowed it. The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. His handwriting looked older somehow. The letter wasn't defensive. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple. He admitted panic, debt, pride, fear of losing everything. He admitted convincing himself that it would work out, that once the house was partially in his name, he'd stabilize things and I'd never even feel the impact. He wrote that hearing his own words played back in court had been worse than the charges. "She won't fight." He said he didn't know when he'd started believing that about me. Neither did I. I didn't write back. Not yet. Forgiveness is not the same thing as access. Spring came slowly that year. The sycamore filled out in pale green buds. The porch needed repainting again. I bought a new brush and did it myself. One afternoon, I stood at the curb and looked at the house. Really looked at it. It wasn't just wood and brick and paperwork. It was proof of endurance, of labor, of partnership with a man who worked nights and trusted me with everything, and of a woman who refused to be processed. If there's anything I've learned, it's this: underestimation is a weapon people hand you without realizing it. Marcus believed age meant confusion. He mistook patience for weakness. He assumed silence meant ignorance. He was wrong. I am 70 years old. I understand contracts. I understand leverage. And I understand when someone is trying to turn my life into collateral. The sycamore still stands in the yard. Its roots run deeper than they look from the surface. So do mine. And this house, this life remains exactly where it belongs, with me. If my story meant something to you, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated because of your age? Have you ever felt pressure to sign something that didn't sit right in your gut? Tell me about it in the comments. And if you're going through something similar right now, please don't ignore that quiet voice inside you. Read everything. Ask questions. Protect what you've built. If this story reminded you that strength doesn't disappear with age, then share it with someone who might need that reminder too. Because the moment we start speaking up for ourselves is the moment everything changes.